We spend a lot of time analyzing the generations on either end of the spectrum. We obsess over boomers and their real estate portfolios, and we write endless think pieces about millennials, Gen Z, and their side hustles. But right in the middle, Generation X is quietly sitting in the background, managing their money in a completely different way. Look closely at your Gen X coworkers, and you'll spot a strange contradiction. They've quietly amassed more wealth than most of us realize, yet they carry a constant low-level anxiety, acting as if they are exactly one missed paycheck away from total disaster. You know exactly who I'm talking about. It's the uncle who keeps 50 grand sitting in a savings account, but absolutely refuses to trade in his rusted 15-year-old Toyota. Their behavior reflects a targeted, rational adaptation to a specific series of economic shocks that redefined their understanding of security. To understand them, you have to rewind to 1983. Picture a 10-year-old watching their parents navigate the workforce. Back then, 20 years at the same company actually guaranteed you a gold watch and total financial security. There was a reliable formula at play. You put your head down, worked hard, saved a steady percentage of your paycheck, and eventually walked away with a guaranteed pension. The math simply worked. Gen X grew up internalizing that stability. They watched the adults around them follow the rules and reap the rewards, leaving them with a foundational belief that the system, at its core, was stable. Then came 2008. The people who followed that formula to the letter watched their 401ks get cut in half. They saw their home values crater and watched secure, lifelong employees get walked out the door with cardboard boxes. The promised stability just evaporated. That specific betrayal shattered their trust, leading to a psychological response known as defensive pessimism. When you operate with defensive pessimism, you actively assume that worst-case scenarios are inevitable. Because you believe everything will eventually fail, you prepare obsessively so that you're covered when the crash happens. This is a chart showing retirement contributions by generation. According to the Transamerica Center for Retirement Studies, 70% of Gen Xers report being terrified of outliving their savings, yet they simultaneously maintain the second highest 401k contribution rates across the board. These peak contribution rates are the byproduct of historical trauma rather than a sudden burst of optimism. They don't expect the system to work, but they max out their accounts as a form of self-defense. That same realism shows up in how they earn. Federal Reserve data reveals Gen X maintains incredibly high rates of self-employment and secondary income streams. But the key detail is that most of them don't quit their corporate 9-to-5s. The Etsy shop or the weekend consulting gig acts as a survival mechanism. They are building escape tunnels, keeping a backup exit open just in case their primary employer decides to downsize them without warning. Meanwhile, their consumer habits operate on a completely different logic. A Gen Xer won't hesitate to job hop via an email to HR, but studies show they are 34% more likely than millennials to buy the exact same brands they used in high school. Institutional betrayal taught them to be ruthless with employers, but they remain fiercely protective of the brands that stayed consistent through their childhood. They trust the things that never lied to them. They direct their loyalty exclusively toward the specific entities, people, and products with a track record of keeping their promises. Everyone else gets treated with intense skepticism. This logic also explains their biggest financial contradiction. Despite all this financial paranoia, Gen X spends an average of $3,000 a year on concerts, travel, and live events, more than any other age group. To them, physical assets aren't the safe havens they used to be. A car can be repossessed. A house can sink underwater overnight. They learned firsthand the tangible markers of the American dream can completely vanish when the economy suddenly tanks. But a memory? The bank can't foreclose on a trip to Europe. Nobody can repossess the experience of seeing your favorite band live in 1994. In an inherently volatile system, Gen X diverts their disposable income toward the only things offering a guaranteed return on investment, experiences that remain perfectly safe from a market crash. This demand for control dictates their relationship with borrowing. Data shows Gen X carries the highest total debt load overall, yet they aggressively avoid carrying chaotic revolving credit card balances. They are perfectly comfortable leveraging a $400,000 mortgage because it's a fixed payment with a predictable timeline. But buying a couch on credit represents a fast track to ruin, having watched high-interest debt swallow people whole in the 80s and 90s. Their skepticism of corporate promises extends to the very hardware those corporations operate. Even though this is the generation that built the modern internet, over 60% of them still maintain physical paper files for their important documents, because they remember exactly what happens when digital databases crash. They operate on a strict strategy of redundancy by design. They'll use modern mobile banking apps and cloud storage, but they insist on fireproof safes and paper statements as physical insurance against the inevitable failure of digital systems. Gen X plays the financial game with absolute pragmatism, having accepted long ago that the rules can change without notice. They trust nothing, prepare for everything, and have mastered the art of surviving a rigged system.